What's your story? Whether you're a client or an independent financial advisor, we know you face many important decisions that can affect your and your clients' long-term financial success. Welcome to the WIN Podcast, What's Important Now with Corey Heimensen, accredited investment fiduciary and president of Heimensen Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, Corey helps you identify your goals and objectives through financial education and comprehensive planning, while inspiring you to make better behavioral decisions in your personal finance. With a twist on pop culture and current events, join us as we explore growth and protection strategies for individuals, advisors, and their businesses. Come and discover what's important to you now.
Welcome to the WIN Podcast with Corey Heimensen, or as I like to call him, your man who's the guide to what's important now. Hey, Corey, how are you?
I didn't even know where that intro was going, but I'm feeling good about it. I'm that guy.
That guy. You're that guy.
You can't see me right now if you're out there in the listening audience, but I'm pointing to myself with two thumbs. It's like, I'm that guy. Yeah.
You are that guy, man. How are you? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Good. Yeah, boy, we had a little stretch here between recording sessions, so it's been a while, but hopefully we're back and can bring an A game here today.
Well, it should be really interesting because I understand that you're going to be a tennis coach today.
Yeah, why wouldn't I? Right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
kind of my famous
tennis coaching on podcasting. There you go, boys and girls.
So yeah, as we release this thing, it's going to be the dead of February in the Midwest where I'm sitting, and you're not in the warmest climate necessarily either.
No, I'm not.
But I thought, why wouldn't we, maybe talk about tennis when there's, not inches, but feet of snow,
ice
across a large part of North America. So yeah, I threw the title out. We'd call this the Winter Tennis Breakdown. And we'll see what happens.
That sounds good to me. But I'm gonna start this by asking you, Corey, what does tennis have to do with finance?
Oh, it's supposed to be tied to finance.
Well, allegedly, Corey Heimensen Wealth, Heimensen Wealth Advisors, that.
Yeah, I mean, people that are tuning in probably want a little bit of finance on the plate here today, I suppose. So, my thought is. And I don't. The phrase hit me as I was driving not that long ago, and it's unforced errors. I'm thinking I watch a lot of sports, but I think tennis, at least as far as I know, is the only one that has a statistic for unforced errors.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't watch enough baseball, which is obsessed with statistics. To know whether there is a category called unforced errors. But I did play tennis some when I was younger and when I was a kid, and I am well familiar with the category of unforced errors.
Like you're an expert?
Yeah, like I'm an expert. Yeah.
Well, I laughed. If you think about this, I think the tennis world defines it as essentially it's a mistake you made, kind of on your own.
Right. It's your mistake.
Okay.
Like a bad serve or when you return a volley and you hit it into the net, right?
Yeah. And so I think tennis also says like there's kind of a 180 of this is the forced error. So if you hit the ball at me and you hit a great shot and then I make a mistake, they say, well, that was forced on me, But
if I drop a 120 mile per hour serve over on you and you miss it, that's a forced error, right?
Yeah, but I mean, even if you hit that thing only 100 miles an hour and it's just an average shot and I skank it off the side of my racket, it seems like all of these are kind of forced errors if you ask me. You know what I mean? This isn't an easy sport. I don't know. Just saying.
No, but there is a certain clarity to the idea of an unforced error. It's your mistake. It's not something your opponent did. It is something that you did that resulted in, either a loss of a point or some kind of bad, basically consequence on the court.
Yeah. And so I started reading into this a little bit because it's one of the things I hadn't thought about in the first 50 some years of my life. And now it's top of mind, But, even the top men's player in the world, Djokovic, that almost sounded like the basketball player from Denver. Novak Djokovic. There you go.
The Joker, as he's called. Yeah.
I looked at this, and so even when he wins a major tournament, there are potentially still hundreds or 100 or more unforced errors on his stat line.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild if you think about it.
Well, it's a reminder, actually, that even the very, very best of tennis players can make unforced errors.
Yeah. And so I think that's the tie-in even to the investing world or the finance world. I mean, unforced errors, human emotion, just sometimes stuff doesn't go the right way. That's part of life, basically.
Yeah. Well, true.
So as I was putting this together, I also had my first flashback of exposure to tennis. You want to hear that story?
Yeah.
So growing up in my small little town, we had 2 tennis courts, not high-end quality.
I hear you.
Not a lot of people played tennis, but I remember I was a young boy, probably lower elementary school, and I think my dad, I can't remember if it was just a men's tournament on a Saturday or if it was a couples or what this was, but I remember him saying to me, "Yeah, they're looking for ball boys at the tennis tournament today." Well, I was like, "Well, that sounds fun. I've seen it on TV. They run across the court. That looks really, really fun."
Yeah.
So I go there, get on one knee like a track starting position, just like they do on TV. And I ran across, got about 3 balls in a row after they got hit in the net. And I was like, this sucks. I'm going to be here all damn day and I'm not getting paid. And then this is no good. So I don't think I played tennis for like 30 years.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny. You were introduced to it by your dad, as it were. I was introduced to it by my dad as well, because my dad used to play on Saturday mornings, and I too grew up in a small town in Texas, and he would go with these 3 other men, and they would play doubles, and they would get together at like 6:30 on Saturday morning, because there weren't a lot of courts, and they went and played on courts that were actually at a little small liberal arts college in town, Austin College. And I would go along with him and watch them play. And fortunately, I didn't have your same experience. I was not a ball boy, and I kind of got into this idea of this kind of looks like fun and something maybe I could do, which is how I got into playing.
Do you still play today?
I do not. Because I think in all of the area I live in right now, there are 4 tennis courts that I can think about that I can recall to mind offhand. Not a lot of tennis courts, and a lot of the tennis courts have, as you know, have been converted into pickleball courts. Pickleball's huge, at least in this part of the country.
I just talked to a client that was traveling this winter up to the Minneapolis area, and I suppose this is in a lot of larger cities too. They're essentially large bars, restaurants tied into pickleball. So essentially, you can make a reservation, go eat and drink and be merry, and it turns into like a half a day event.
Whoa!
But you got to call in like weeks in advance to even get I was going to say a tea time. It's not a tea time. It's a whatever.
I don't know what it would be called. A serve time? I don't know.
But that's part of our society of advancement of making things easier, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily, because I think it's pretty safe to say pickleball is an easier game to play than tennis.
It's a much easier game to play.
And a lot less physical. You don't have to cover as much ground.
No. The biggest asset to that is at least to get you out on a court and get you moving around, right? That's the logic.
Absolutely. So I'm from the Midwest. Maybe tennis isn't real hot and popular here all the time, but from somebody like you on the East Coast, you ever go to the U.S. Open of tennis?
I have never been to the U.S. Open, even though I lived at one point like maybe 8 miles from the stadium. But I had a friend of mine who was stationed overseas, and his return home every year included a trip to the U.S. Open.
Interesting.
He was a huge U.S. Open fan, yeah.
I mean, I sort of pay attention to tennis, just whoever wins the majors,
Sure.
around the world. But the U.S. Open is one that I actually enjoy and I watch on TV. And I think a lot of it's just because it's a lot of the better matches toward the end of the tournament are in prime time at night, and
Yep.
it's New York City, and the crowd's a little rowdy, and they're all drinking these Honey Deuce drinks.
Honey Deuce.
I learned about that this year watching. They said that, like the Kentucky Derby, I think has its own drink of choice. It's the mint julep or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, boy, it's amazing. The people ask me of the books I read, and I don't really read books, but I read a lot of random, interesting, factual stuff like this.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. Yeah.
The Honey Deuce was created by the people that make Grey Goose vodka, because they were trying to find a way to sell more vodka. So essentially, it's to me, it sounds like it's a raspberry lemonade with vodka in it. But anyway, there you go. There's your fun fact of the day.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. I must confess, I don't know. Well, I did not know what a Honey Deuce was until now.
And if you really want to get cute, I think they also involve a scoop or a melon baller to put chunks of fruit in these things that look like tennis balls.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're off the path.
Okay. That feels like an unforced error, unforced podcasting error.
One. I have one now. Okay. And so, yeah, let's tie it to finance. I mean, there's probably, in my opinion, let's say 5 types of unforced errors. And this can be tennis, this can be finance. But the first, I think, is decision making.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And basically, decision making ties to, in my opinion, maybe it's a lapse of concentration. Maybe it's just flat out poor judgment, and that's easy to do for people when it comes to their money. Well, they might have emotions. They might have a cognitive bias, or
Sure.
there might be other things going on in their brain that just leads them to do the wrong thing or make a wrong decision at the wrong time. And I think the first step to solve an unforced errors is admitting that they're out there.
Yeah. Well, no, I know you probably will get to this, but that's the whole reason that the category of unforced errors is kept, to be serious. Because when you evaluate your game, if you're a professional, if you're like Djokovic, you're going to look down and say, where was I at fault? Because I can fix that.
Oh, totally. You want to even tie this into, let's say, golf. I mean, you could watch a professional golf tournament, and how many guys or gals are within 5 strokes of winning over 4 days of golf? You know what I mean? It doesn't take very many small lapses in judgment or or an unforced error on a 3-footer that has a huge consequence.
True.
And so I'm not telling clients to strive for perfection. It's progress. It's keeping your head, keeping a cool head, making good decisions, and generally hard work, good decisions over time are going to outweigh the bad decisions, and you still get a more favorable outcome than if you really drop the ball consistently and frequently. And a lot of this is psychological. We can say that in tennis, life, golf.
Oh, gosh.
The the space between your ears, man, it's got to be dialed in.
Well,
And
between
focus.
emotions and psychology, I think you pretty much covered the world of money right there.
Yeah. And man, I mean, we're going in a lot of tangents, or maybe I am, but it's a political year too, so there's a lot of money involved in politics, whether that's in office, trying to get in office,
Trying to stay in office.
Yes, I mean, we can go on and on, but yeah, we probably don't want to go there. But I mean, the key part, boy, and I'm really hammering the drum on this, is don't make irrational decisions very often. Try to think things through, take the time it requires, and sometimes the clients I respect even the most are the ones that maybe I give them, or my team gives them, what we think is a great idea, just a rock solid, rock star type idea. And they might say, we want to go home and think about it. by all means, I'll pat them on the back and say, that's a great idea. And, 99 out of 100 times they come back and say, that's a great idea. We should do that. But you want it to be on your feel-good terms, basically.
Well, all of us make mistakes, especially in the areas of investing, and a lot of it does come down to emotion and psychology. And I'm sure you've got a lot of stories relating to clients in this exact way. What do you do, or how do you help educate or guide your clients to make better decisions, I guess?
Well, and a lot of times it's just a question they've never had before. I'll look them in the eye, and if their thought process isn't tracking maybe what I'm going for or what we're trying to explain, I'll say, tell me your first good story about money in life. And they'll come up with something. And then I'll say, tell me your worst life story about money. And if you get those two answers from somebody, it just turns the page. It just shows you why they think the way they think today. Not just because I'm a finance guy, but if you get somebody's personal story that has touched them and stuck in their brain for years, if not decades, related to money, it's probably because they lost money. They either missed out on an opportunity or they just flat out lost money on something. And that leaves a scar, and that's okay, but just let's learn from those stories, learn from those scars, and don't make the same damn mistake again, And that kind of ties into my third point here of these unforced errors, and that's learning. It's learning and it's improving. We're going to make mistakes, but damn it, if you make a mistake, let's reflect on what went wrong. What could we have controlled to get a better outcome than we got? And I bet that's something the best tennis players do too. Like you said, even if they win, they'd probably go back, watch the tape, and look through things and be like, there was a point, there was 7 points, whatever it is that I could have fixed, I could have altered, and maybe, just maybe got a better outcome once, maybe 5 times. You know what I mean? Progress is progress. If you can solve and fix little things that were still under your control for next time, man, that's a win.
Yeah. No, that is the secret to getting better, isn't it? I mean, the secret to getting better, whether it be in tennis, golf, or just life, is, looking at, evaluating what happened there, and then learning from that moment or that situation or that mistake.
Oh, how many marriages do you think could be improved or saved from that exact point you just made?
Oh, Lord, a lot.
Communication. A lot of fighting, they say, comes from money situations, but it doesn't matter what it is. Look back, see if you can fix it, improve yourself, improve somebody else. I mean, man, I should get a therapy degree.
There you go.
No,
Well, I think probably a lot of financial advisors at some point in their life think, I should probably get it. I probably already have a therapy degree here somewhere.
Ones. Yeah, no, I think that you're spot on. The good ones, the successful, the best deliverers of value in our industry are those that sit in my seat and can meet with people at their level.
Yeah.
And understand, yes, this is emotional and it hurts sometimes, but let's get through this together. And that's, boy, we've covered a lot of ground, went in a lot of different directions, but the last 2 points I'll make here is a lot of times people don't have the proper perception of risk.
In what way? How do you mean?
Meaning that I think they underestimate risk of certain things. Meaning like an investment, for example.
Right.
Everybody wants the years where you make lots of money. But they have to experience a down year where you get kicked in the tail end, on paper at least.
Yeah.
And you then your clock is reset, so to speak. Your expectation clock's reset, that you realize, oh, maybe that was a little riskier than I wanted to be. And so our office scores everything they have on every holding they have. We score it every day. So we know most likely the expectations looking forward 6 months with a 95% probability of outcomes. So we can show people like, hey, you want to be in the XYZ super aggressive position, it might be this on the upside, but it might be this on the downside. And boy, that'll reset somebody's eyes in a hurry. They say, well, geez, I want to make 20%, but I sure as hell don't want to go down 19. Well, that's your range of outcomes, sir or ma'am, And so I think you have to understand, and, doctors, surgeons, I think they do a good job of this. They will spell out the risks pretty clearly to somebody before something major is going to go into play. And once you have an understanding of that, you might not like the risk you're facing, but if you have an understanding of what it is, it makes you willing to accept it, or maybe to not accept it and look for a different route. And I think that is super important, to try and get optimal outcomes. Number one, you have to understand what you're up against, and you cannot underestimate risk. You must know what you're up against.
Yeah. It's funny. I spent many years as a business and financial reporter. And to this point, I was always not shocked, but I was always kind of amazed at people who did not understand risk associated with certain positions or strategies. For example, like short selling a stock or leveraging an option. Because it's sold to you online as like, these are really simple, easy things to do. This is okay. This is fine. And look what you can do. You can get 20% in an afternoon. And of course, nobody who's selling those strategies emphasizes or tells you could also lose 50 or 60% in the process.
This is one of my simple pleasures in life. If somebody's in our office and they just casually mention that they have an online trading account, they day trade a little bit, I'll say to them some of the terms you just used. I'll be like, oh, are you trading options? You long, you short, you naked, you're trading on margin. I can start laying out terms to them and they have no idea what I'm talking about. None. And they kind of get that glazed over look, and I'm like, but I'm sure you're just doing fine, so I'd go ahead and trade there too if I were you. But it's setting the expectation that there's things you can do in life, but you probably should understand the risks, Yep.
But
I would also hazard a guess that people that try to do that sort of stuff on their own, if they're not playing in their proper risk tolerance category, they probably don't do it for 10 years or for 50 years. It's probably a year or two, and then they figure out that, boy, that went south. I'm just sick of this and done.
Right.
And boy, we can tie this back to the housing and, and the financial crisis of many years ago and like the Big Short movie and so forth. It's like so many people didn't understand the risk of mortgage-backed securities or derivatives related to housing. And, it's really fascinating. But if you look at it, under a microscope, it's like that stuff was just destined to blow up. And it's amazing that the big Wall Street firms didn't see that. But the reason they didn't see that is because they were getting paid. They were getting paid to trade that stuff. And so it's like a game of musical chairs. And if you're just running the music, you think it's all good and good. But pretty soon, if you're in the game and there's no chairs left, it gets real.
Mm-hmm.
And by real, I mean people lose money. You can look at Enron. That's a name from years ago too, and might have been from your reporting past.
Yep.
Their books and the things they were doing offshore, selling barges and container ships and lacing them back. It was so complicated. The analysts had no clue. They had no clue what kind of shell game was going on there. And eventually it comes to light, and the people that lose are mom and pop people, a lot of them that worked for pipeline companies that got eventually sold out to Enron, the parent company. And, they lost 401ks and they lost lots of assets. They
lost lots and lots of money, man. It was on the human side of finance, that was really just depressing. It was so horrible because there were a lot of pensions and there were a lot of retirement funds and monies invested, in that company. And, a little confession on my part, I interviewed the CEO, Jeffrey Skilling, at one point when Enron was flying high. And it never occurred to me to think this seems too good to be true.
Yep.
And we know what happens when things seem to be too good to be true, don't we, Corey?
Yeah, yeah. And I think back to that same time period too. I was getting most of my financial news from the Wall Street Journal when it got delivered every day at that time.
Right.
And Enron was like the 7th largest company in the S&P 500 or something like that. And I remember reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and this is when things still flying high for Enron. Mm-hmm. And Skilling was quoted, during a quarterly conference call, and he basically swore at somebody from a reporter that asked a question that he didn't like.
Yeah.
And I thought, boy, that's odd. Why would he just lose his cool and really rip that guy over what seemed like a reasonable question? Well, you know what? You fast forward like a year and all that stuff hit the fan. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
That was
I do.
That was the tell of all tells when he completely snapped in a conference call, when those CEO type people and CFO people are supposed to be on top of their game and calm, cool, and collected. He showed his hand. And in that, I don't know if I'd call it a regret, but looking back in time, if I'd have really thought through that more and know what I know today, I'd have been like, boy, everybody in the world should get rid of their Enron stock.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, no, from my own personal experience, I totally understand that. Yes. Yeah.
And all of this, where we're going ties into my last point here. That worked out well. Overconfidence. You know what I mean? When stuff is going good, whether you're trading on your own or whether you're trading through a good advisor and everything's just roses and it's working, it's easy to get overconfident. It's easy to get your allocations out of whack, get too aggressive. And just like the sun comes up, there's days of reckoning in markets, and there's going to be years, absolutely, when the markets go down. There's going to be recessions. There's going to be storms. But you know what? There's going to be good days too.
True. And the good days tend to make you think, hey, I'm pretty good at this.
That's my famous story. Like if I'm walking to work every day and I find $1 on the ground 7 out of 10 days, I'm not going to try and pick which 7 out of 10 days I walk to work. I'm going to walk to work every one of them damn 10 days. And, 3 days I'm going to be disappointed. But you know what? Markets go up 70% of the time historically too.
Yeah, that's great. Good point. Good point. So how do you help them assess the risk? I mean, I would imagine for someone like yourself, a financial advisor, it's easy to talk to somebody when they've, had a little wake-up call. But when somebody is doing well, and I don't mean okay, I mean doing exceptionally well, earning double-digit returns. And how do you talk to those people and raise the idea of, do you understand your risk and dare you broach the topic of overconfidence? Yeah,
absolutely. In the first 20 years of my career, we would have clients come in and call them review meetings. Let's review things. Let's look backwards, and now we call them progress meetings. And so what does that mean? It means, am I making progress in the right categories? Looking backwards, yeah, I get it. We got to do that a little bit. But number one, do we have things dialed in to give you and your family the cash flow you need every month? Number one. That's the most important thing. I don't care if you're a billionaire or you make 20 grand a year. That's the thing you dial in first, Yeah. And so once we get that, then we think about, how about being smart from a tax standpoint? That's something we can control. So both of these things I just explained, if you have income and we did this thing right with the investments, we should be able to get the cash flow somewhere where we want it to be, unless somebody's goals are crazy on what they spend. But focusing on things we can control, let's talk about that. Yeah, we're knocking it out of the park. This is awesome. But you know what? It could get stormy. We're reading research. We see interest rates going up. That causes problems in the bond market. We try to lay out outcomes based on history. And we're not here to be salespeople and just promise all the pleasantries that we want to promise everybody, because we know that there's days that this stuff doesn't work temporarily for a while, And so, hey, let's manage taxes. Let's make sure your cash flow is right. And then we can weather these volatility storms because they don't matter. You know what I mean? If we've got cash flow dialed in, we're taking care of withdrawals, keeping the IRS happy, we're doing all these things that we're supposed to do, the volatility isn't that important. You know what I mean? Turbulence on an airplane, not that big a deal if the plane still lands.
Yeah. That's a big if in that case, though, Corey.
But it's commuting to work, too. If you're taking a car, you're taking a train,
I know.
a bus, whatever it is, there's days where that commute's going to suck. You know, maybe you got an extra car in front of you driving slow. Maybe the train's late. I don't know. You deal with what you deal with, but you keep looking forward. And sometimes that means conversations with family and friends that aren't about fun topics because we're all on the same path here. There's a limited timeline for everybody. So you got to plan for that and talk about that too, even if it's not a fun thing to dive into.
True. So how are we going to wrap this one up?
I'm done.
You're done. Corey's done, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I think the real takeaway here is, learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to talk about them. You know what I mean? And emphasize or maybe I need to emphasize the need for people to be aware of things and to reflect on things. And hey, let's all just be out there to try and continuously improve. And then we're going to get those better outcomes that we deserve.
That sounds like a great summary. That's terrific. As always, Corey, our conversations are a little all over the place, but always really interesting. And there's a lot of golden advice in there, if you will. No pun intended.
There you go.
Thanks, Corey.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm sure you found this interesting. I know you found it useful. If you are not a subscriber already, this is easy. This part's simple. Hit subscribe. Hit the button. That's all. Then you don't have to remember where you heard Corey or how often Corey comes out with a podcast. It will be delivered to your listening device. It'll be there. It'll appear. And then you can listen and you'll never miss another episode. Well, I would also ask that, humbly, if you like the podcast, rate it, share it with others, get the word out about Corey and what he's talking about here, and be much appreciated. On behalf of Corey Heimensen and everybody that he works with, I'm Bill Tucker, urging you to remember to live your best life today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the WIN Podcast. What's important now? The show that helps you achieve your financial dreams. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Stop Doing Dumb Things with Your Money by Corey Heimensen, visit www.heimensenwealth.com or give us a call at 712-472-3867. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc. Heimensen Wealth Advisors and Securities America are separate entities.